As a film nerd, I remember a lot of my first movie theater experiences really fondly, and one of my all time best theater experiences was seeing Revenge of the Sith opening weekend with my family. I was about 7 at the time, and I was so amped for it. Yoda has always been my favorite character, and the idea of him fighting Sidious was something I was here for. But as an adult who analyzes film with more scrutiny now, I can definitely see some of the faults that are common to complain about with the prequels. The dialogue is definitely clunky at times, there's an over-reliance on CGI, and there's too much politics for my personal liking. But underneath it all, I do think that there's a beautiful story at the core of the prequels that may not get enough credit. This trilogy at its core is really the story of Obi-Wan and Anakin. In the first film, they both lose a father figure in Qui-Gon Jinn. They're both tempted by the dark side in Episode 2, Anakin when his mother is killed, and Obi-Wan when his master's master offers him the option of joining him and leaving the Jedi Order. And then they ultimately cross blades in a gruesome battle in the climactic moment of Episode 3. But the clash that Kenobi and Skywalker have is narratively built up, starting all the way back in Phantom Menace. Obi-Wan, when he fights Maul at the end of Episode 1, is very aggressive and tries to match brute force with brute force, especially after Qui-Gon is killed. But this doesn't end up working well for him because he ends up having to pull off a crazy miracle maneuver in order to defeat the Sith. But he learns from his mistake and develops a much more defensive-minded style going forward. We see this as he's the Jedi that gets picked to pursue General Grievous, who is a four-armed combatant who brings nothing but offense to the table. And Kenobi manages to disarm Grievous fairly quickly, and even ends up killing his so uncivilized cyborg combatant. But the key thing to note here is that Obi-Wan, while fighting Darth Maul one-on-one, briefly tapped into his emotions. His sadness and the anger he felt gave him a temporary amp that allowed him to fight Maul, a much stronger opponent, on an even playing field temporarily. But ultimately, these emotions left him unbalanced, both figuratively and literally, as he's knocked off his feet by Maul. This moment is so important because it really helps us see the overarching dynamic between the dark side and the light. You see, the dark side is not stronger than the light, but it certainly gives you more immediate power. Kind of think of it like a rage amp. By tapping into your emotions, you get immediate bursts of strength. Whereas with the light side, by having the strength to resist falling prey to the quicker and easier path, you'll consistently grow in strength over time and be a more balanced combatant. And this fight with Darth Maul is truly what I think opens Obi-Wan's eyes to the flaw of the Sith. They're unbalanced and their overconfidence leaves them vulnerable. Anakin is presented with a similar moment in Attack on the Clones when his mother dies. Naturally, he gets an influx of emotions at this time, and he opts to use his anger and sadness and takes it out on all the Tusken Raiders around him. Anakin lets his emotions get the best of him here, and we see him start to show some of the same flaws as the Sith post this event. He's very unbalanced emotionally, and his overconfidence comes to bite him in his clash with Count Dooku later in the film, as he just rushes at him with reckless abandon and eats some Force lightning for his troubles. By the time that Revenge of the Sith comes around, it is clear that Anakin has physically surpassed Obi-Wan. He's the chosen one, he's stronger in the Force, he performs much better in their fight with Count Dooku, but his emotions leave him unbalanced and vulnerable still. He's having visions of his wife's death in his dreams, and just like with his mother, he allows these emotions to take control and drive his decision-making. Unlike Obi-Wan, who learned to combat and suppress his desires, Anakin embraces them and is fueled by them. Their fight on Mustafar is not just a tragic clash between a master and his fallen student, it is symbolic of the eternal clash between the Sith and Jedi as well. Obi-Wan, as is the Jedi way, has slowly over time developed his strength. While not incredibly skilled, he's honed his defensive style over the years, and his emotional balance gives him a clear head during the fight. On the other hand, Anakin is fighting all off of emotions, and his emotions do give him a great power boost, but he's not thinking straight, and his overconfidence leads to his ultimate downfall. You see, I think the beauty of the story being told in the prequel trilogy is that, despite the fact that the Sith had to come out on top due to the continuity of the franchise, George Lucas still manages to convey why the Sith are always destined to lose in the long run, as those who can overcome their anger and hatred are always going to succeed when all is said and done. Thematically, this connects really well to what Yoda tells Anakin before his fall to the dark side. The fear of loss is a path to the dark side. Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is. Train yourself to let go, of everything you fear to lose. This is really the crux of what separates the Jedi and the Sith. A Jedi acknowledges their emotions, but rather than indulging in them, they let their emotional attachments go and remain balanced. In Episode 2, Obi-Wan could have been swayed to the dark side by the allure of Count Dooku. He's the man who trained Obi-Wan's master, and he was kind of tugging on his heartstrings a bit by trying to use the death of Qui-Gon as an emotional bond to connect the two. But similar to the climactic clash of Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan refuses to allow his emotions to deceive him and shows the emotional and mental fortitude that the Sith lack. One could argue that this is the moment that secures Kenobi's victory over his fallen apprentice, as he doesn't beat Anakin due to his strength, his speed, his use of the Force, or his incredibly impressive beard. He wins because of his strength to resist temptation. All in all, I think the prequel trilogy does an excellent job of presenting both of our main characters with the same temptation of the dark side, and slowly showing how their diverging paths lead ultimately to a clash of blades, a clash of ideologies, a clash between brothers. Because ultimately the Sith and Jedi are opposite sides of the same coin, as everyone will feel some kind of anger and sadness at some point of their lives. It's all just a matter of how you react to and internalize it. Thank you for watching this breakdown of the prequel trilogy. If you enjoyed it or are interested in further explorations of screen stories, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe.